Hello and welcome. I'm Michelle Benitez, a librarian at Stanford Health Library. Thank you for joining us for our talk, 5 Nutrition Pitfalls to Avoid for Lasting Change. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Leah Groppo. Leah is a diabetes educator and senior clinical dietitian in Stanford's Endocrinology Clinic and Diabetes Care Program. Leah has experience counseling patients on how to achieve their health goals and interpret pump and CGM data focused on customized diabetes management. At Stanford, she teaches diabetes education classes, conducts one-on-one appointments, teaches fellows and medical students, and mentors interns. Leah is board certified in advanced diabetes management. Throughout the talk, please enter any questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and at the end of the talk, Leah will answer as many of those as possible. Thanks, and over to you, Leah.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate it. So today we're going to talk about nutrition pitfalls to avoid for lasting change. This is a topic that is so near and dear to my heart because I feel like we're bombarded with all of these phrases, right? Phrases like, eat less sugar, there's hidden sugar, how do you read nutrition fact labels, what's the new fad diet that everyone needs to try? So where are all these kind of buzzwords and phrases that we're getting thrown at us? I really wanted to take the time tonight to really go over some ways to avoid different pitfalls. So I'm not going to focus specifically on 5 things not to do with nutrition, but more that putting you kind of in the expert chair and saying, hey, in my life, this is the goal that I really want to accomplish because you are the expert in your own life. I truly believe that to my core. And I'm going to give you parameters and guidelines to be able to evaluate how to have the most successful opportunity to meet the goals and the things that you want to accomplish with your health. In this session, I'm going to also pepper in examples, stories, and then also give some very concrete examples as to what I mean. If you need more examples, feel free to let me know. For this slide, I was just thinking maybe people think the dietitian is the expert, and I definitely am. However, for tonight, I really want you to think about putting on your expert hat because you're the one who knows the ins and outs of your own life. I don't know that. And so you know what your nights look like, what your daytimes look like, when you like to get up, what types of foods you like, how you prefer to eat, what your work schedule looks like, all of these things that I can't even assume to understand, but you know so intimately well. So I want you to think about putting on your own expert hat tonight and really be thinking and evaluating as we go through these pitfalls, which ones you can avoid and how you can really work on avoiding them. So I really wanted to start by getting to know you all. So this is called Poll Everywhere. You can take out your phone. It's a QR code. You can open up your camera and scan it. It will take you to a link. You don't have to download an app. It will take you to a link and ask for your name. Since this is an anonymous presentation, we just ask that you choose any letter that you want instead of putting your name in because it is being recorded. So barcode scan, put a letter in for your name. And then on the next slide, I'm going to be asking you a simple question. You can type in your answer and then it will magically pop up on the screen. So hopefully everyone has had the opportunity to barcode scan the QR code. And so we're on to our poll. So feel free to type in the answer to what healthy changes do you want to focus on? Eating more vegetables, losing weight, yeah. Weight management, avoid anxiety eating. Yeah, that's a good one to think about. Better control of blood sugar. Introducing more movement to my life. I love that. Less sugar. in the diet. Weight management after menopause. Yeah, so our bodies are changing, and how does that affect how we eat? Keeping weight off and stopping that yo-yo cycle. Whoever put that in, this is hopefully what my talk will help address, definitely. Weight management, plant-based foods, adequate protein, avoiding type 2 diabetes. So somebody living with prediabetes, plateauing. So maybe you've been on this adventure of this goal, and you're meeting it, achieving it, and then you sort of hit this plateau. So I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes, and then we'll keep moving through the presentation. Getting healthier, building muscle, flexibility, and losing weight. So those are a lot of things to think about. And as we're going through this, I'll try to kind of weave some of these ideas that you all are mentioning, being very interested in today, into the presentation. So I'll try to weave in different examples and ways to be thinking about being at a plateau or trying to get adequate nutrition, focusing on more plants. So great. Thank you all for sharing and sharing your thoughts with that. Really helpful. So I must say, sometimes I am an overachiever, not always, just sometimes. Actually, probably not. You should scratch that. But I wanted to do 5 pitfalls. But as I was working on this presentation, I actually changed, and I want to do 5 pitfalls when setting yourself up for success. So as you set up to start achieving a goal, and then I want to do 5 other pitfalls when you're trying to sustain a change. So we actually have 10 that we're going to go over today, but 5 and 5. So really it still does meet the title, it's just expanded. So really thinking through these are my pitfalls for kind of setting yourself up for success. As you're approaching a behavior change, how do we give you the best option to have the outcome that you'd like? Well, I think sometimes our pitfall is waiting for all the stars to align, everything to be perfect before starting, focusing more on the destination, the end point, instead of the journey that it needs to happen to get there. 3 is starting with a really vague goal. So something you're not totally sure about, and it doesn't really help create this smooth path for you to move forward with. 4, not thinking through kind of your whole change and what that entails and means in your life. And then 5, really not having a specific action plan that's not really tied to that outcome that you're hoping to achieve. So we're gonna go in more depth with all of these different pitfalls as we continue. And I am somebody who really likes to keep the positivity. I'm all about trying to make things fun and interesting and positive when possible. And so these are kind of maybe the negative pitfalls that you can fall into. But as we move forward, I'm going to reframe them all into more positive questions that you can ask yourself. Are you ready? I'm so excited. I'm also really appreciative that you all are joining me on this evening, and I really appreciate that. So thinking about getting all of our stars aligned, pitfall number 1, thinking around instead asking, what can I start with today? Like, what could I do today? Instead of thinking, I need everything to be dialed in before I can make a change. Because what happens if everything needs to sync up before we can make a change? It doesn't happen often, right? We want maybe our kids to go to bed at an early hour. We want pickup to happen on time. We want food to arrive at our doorstep. We want an hour to exercise. We want everything. And so oftentimes our lives don't really understand that and line up in that way. And so sometimes if we're waiting for kind of all these stars to align, we really are just going to be waiting so long and missing out on the benefits of starting. So really asking ourselves, what can I start today? Not how can I make my environment set up to be kind of perfect for this goal? There's no such thing as perfect in life, and definitely not when we're thinking about making behavior changes. So the next one, I always like to envision, like when we goal set, we always think about, oh, we're going to set this goal, we're going to focus on the goal, and we're going to accomplish the goal, right? We want to accomplish goals. And I think sometimes we do focus a lot on goals when we're talking about nutrition goals, setting healthy goals, setting exercise goals. However, I think sometimes we actually want to almost think through that and say, it's not the goal that we're really trying to think through. It's the future state that we're looking to achieve later, right? So it's almost like if I were in charge of this net, I would cut a little hole in the net and the soccer ball would keep moving, right? When we make goals, we don't want to accomplish the goal and stop. We want the goal to continue and become a habit for life, oftentimes when we're thinking about nutrition goals. So looking at this picture, instead of achieving a goal, we want to think about broadening that. So getting the goal and thinking more around a lifestyle change and not just accomplishing a goal. So kind of reframing that a little bit more and really sort of focusing more on that kind of change, not goals. This is one of my favorite stories, the tortoise and the hare. So when we're thinking around our goals, we often want to be the hare, the bunny rabbit, that is trying to race the slower turtle, leaves the start line super fast and races forward and then ends up taking a nap and relaxing. And then meanwhile, the little turtle who's been chugging along the whole time surpasses that hare and moves towards the finish line. So it's so very tempting to think about, let's just go out really strong. I'm really motivated. I really want to make changes. So I'm going to do all of it. Everything I can think of, I will try. And so really the downside to this is it's great to have a lot of motivation. It's great to want to try lots of different things, but what is the downside to changing everything about your life? I think often we don't realize like our life was already very full and very rich beforehand when we wanted to make this shift in our health. And so if we kind of downgrade all of that and we only upgrade this behavior change, then the rest of our life is still kind of sitting there, maybe in a standstill in limbo. And we want to try to think about how can we connect our goal that we want to achieve, our continuous change. See, I still say goal all the time. I mean, goals are great, but just broadening how we think about them into our life. So we live a full life, and then how do we blend them together instead of replacing, right? We sometimes think, oh, well, now I have to replace all these things and I can't do the things that I used to enjoy. And that's not something that we always want to focus up and have to give up. In classes, often when I teach classes around blood sugar, we talk a lot about thinking about creating these sort of more realistic goals that we can keep moving at, because this is something that is chronic. So we live with it for a long time. We have a lot of opportunities to make the change. And there are also different seasons of life, right? There are seasons that might be have a lot more time for these changes, and there are seasons that have maybe less time. And so acknowledging and being okay with that. And I hope to, I'm a very visual learner. And so hopefully with all these pictures at the end of this talk, you can go through and really be remembering, oh yeah, the tortoise and the hare, I actually want to be the tortoise. I keep calling them turtles and bunnies. But yeah, you want to be the one maybe that's edging through a little bit slower, but has a lot of staying power with that change, because that's what's going to meet the needs for the long-term change. And that is definitely something we like to focus on and really think about, that long-term change. Because when we're thinking about short-term change, and I come from a health care lens, specifically, typically working with people around blood sugars in diabetes, living with prediabetes, living with diabetes. And so we want to think about what are things we can do to make changes to numbers, but also things that we can continue. So once we get maybe in 3 months a lower hemoglobin A1C number, what we did to accomplish that is the thing that needs to be a habit moving forward, right? So if we do so many things that they can't convert to habits, then that does a disservice to the goals and the work that you've done. Okay, thinking about really where does your goal tell you need to go? So a lot of people will just say, like, I want to be healthy, right? I want to be healthy. You all want to be healthy. We kind of want to be healthy. It's so vague. So thinking about kind of that really vague goal. So pitfall number 3, it's so vague that, of course, that's our desire, but we have no markers, no actions associated with that. I want to be healthy. And so sometimes when we have the goal of I want to be healthy or I want to lower my A1C, but not with actions tied to those goals, what can happen is we can get super frustrated, right? You can wake up, you can dream about being healthy, you can want to be healthy, but if those lifestyle and the actions aren't changing along the way, then the outcomes aren't going to change either. So really being very intentional about kind of what our plan is. So really try and have a plan. Some other ones that I think are more on the sort of the vague side. So thinking about, I want to lower my A1C. Again, no action. I want my cholesterol to be lower, my lipids. I want my LDL, low density lipoprotein, the one we want lower, versus HDL, high density lipoprotein. We want that higher, more heart protective. You want to move those numbers. That's something great to want, but it doesn't give us the action of what you need. I want to be active. I want to cook meals for my family, or I want to lose weight. That was a really big one that I heard earlier in this talk. So a lot of people, when just asked about the topic, not asked about a goal, I didn't ask you to formulate a goal, but asking about topics, a lot of people wanted weight management, losing weight, not converting to type 2 diabetes, or managing blood sugars if you are living with type 2 diabetes. And I think when we're thinking about weight loss can be a tricky goal, right? A lot of people have tried to lose weight. Sometimes the numbers don't follow the actions of health as fast as we wish they would, right? We have a lot of wishes, I think, in our brain, how we want things to react in our body. And sometimes our body doesn't always line up with that, numbers wise, lab wise. Sometimes we need to give our body a little more time to really catch up to these healthy changes that we're doing. So really trying to be as specific as possible, and also thinking about really making realistic goals as we're going through these. And something that we really like to focus on at Stanford in our diabetes education classes is SMART goal setting. I'm not sure if you all know, but I can go through SMART goal setting quickly. It's something I really believe in. It's basically an acronym. Acronyms can be helpful. So thinking about, is something specific, measurable, action, realistic, and time bound or time limit. So when we're thinking about setting a goal, instead of going in, I want to be healthy or I want to lose weight, that's a great kind of overarching thing you can think about in your brain. But when we think about weight loss, maybe is the goal something around like, I eat 5 meals out at restaurants. I want to eat 3 meals out at restaurants per week instead of 5. Something like that, that might make more of a weight range change. Also thinking around maybe at 3 p.m., I always get tired and I reach for a candy bar or a higher energy dense snack, one that maybe is more than what my stomach needs in the moment, because it's what's easy. So that might be a place to kind of target that SMART goal. So maybe bringing snacks for that 3 p.m. lull. And those snacks maybe could be like nuts or seeds, something with fiber and fat, something filling. It could be like veggie based, fiber based. It could be crackers that have 5 grams of fiber per serving and some cheese, something that will kind of move you through the day, but you have plans so you kind of know that you'll have that option, versus trying to run around work and find whatever is close that you can buy or purchase. So trying to really think about where the places that maybe are affecting things like wanting to lose weight. Where are those times? Oftentimes people also mention maybe a time at night. So nighttime sometimes can be a really tricky time around trying to manage eating or not eating, whatever you choose. And again, I think the way that we can't give a directive and say, you can't eat after 7 p.m., right? We can't say that because we don't know what your life looks like. Maybe you get home at 9 p.m. and you don't have options to eat earlier. But for you being the driver of your own expert, thinking, okay, maybe I can eat a dinner with carbohydrates, fats, and proteins that's balanced, and veggies and maybe some fruit on the side. But maybe I'm not going to eat Lay's potato chips or potato chips for dinner instead, right? Or cookies or something that is more calorie dense, but doesn't give you the nutrition that your brain and body might be wanting after a long day. So thinking really through, like, is your goal clear? And is it kind of a SMART goal? So I really like to think through these. And honestly, I actually do this in my life all the time. At any given time, I normally have an array of SMART goals going on in my brain. I have sticky notes in my house. And I've really realized you can want to try lots of different things, but it can be really helpful in a busy life to just stick to one. So I have kind of converted into like a one sticky note person and really working on one goal. And then once I feel like that goal has been achieved, like maintaining it and starting a new goal. But I definitely use SMART goal setting in my own life. I used to not, and my goals were very vague and didn't accomplish them as often as I wish I had. So I think this is also something I really wanted to talk through, thinking about what are the steps that you need to take to accomplish your goal. So I'll let that sink in for a quick moment. Thinking about when we want to do something, a lot of people will say, I want a meal plan. I think planning my meals, planning my lunches is going to solve lots of problems. Maybe it's hard to get food at work, so you're getting food at restaurants, things you don't necessarily want to eat. It's spiking your blood sugar, whatever the case may be. But backing up, when we say, I want to plan meals, we do need to spend a little bit of time and really think about, okay, what does that mean? What does that actually entail to accomplish this goal? So if I'm going back and I'm trying to make a goal that's realistic and something that I can really do that's specific, sometimes trying to tackle multiple meals in a week and meal plan might be a very large goal, actually. It seems like it might be so easy, but if we kind of go forward and we think about, like, what does that goal entail? Well, we have to find recipes that we want to try. We have to think about a shopping list. We have to get the groceries. We have to build time into our life for meal prepping. So if we're used to ordering lunches or purchasing lunches, now we have to make time for dishes and cooking. And so that can also be a little bit challenging. We could think about, do we even have food storage containers? I was working with someone earlier this week, and we were talking about meal prepping, and that was something that she really wanted to invest more in, actually having containers to store the food that she planned to make. So thinking through all of these details, also realizing, do you have prior engagements for dinner meals? Do you meet up with friends for dinner? Are you going to be missing out on that social connection, something that also might be a little bit sad? So what are the pros of making this goal and what are the cons? I think sometimes when we're stepping into a goal, we always think there's only pros, right? If I meal prep and pack my food for work, and maybe the outcome of that is I feel better, maybe my blood sugar lowers and my cholesterol lowers, there can't be a downside, right? Well, I would counter that and say there can be a downside, right? Thinking about all these different things we have to think through when we make these changes. It does alter our life. And I'm not trying to discourage people, but I'm also saying that sometimes when these goals we set up that we're so motivated, so motivated to do, and we feel them in our bones, that I really want to meal prep, and then they don't happen, that can be so frustrating. I feel like there has to be a bigger word than frustrating. That's just so frustrating. And it can really demotivate people so fast. And so taking a little bit of the time to really think through what it needs to happen to get into this goal, I think can be really helpful. And breaking that goal down, like maybe if we're really thinking about a SMART goal, perhaps our first week's goal is to look for 3 new recipes that we could make in bulk to meal prep, maybe that's a goal for a week, right? To really break it down. Maybe our next goal is finding time to meal prep. So figuring out who can take something off your plate so you have time to meal prep or go to the grocery store, ordering things that you need if there's food that you want to order or storage containers. So really trying to set yourself up for success, because the thing that is so challenging is if we make this goal with lots of intention and motivation, and then all these little pieces happen and they can be overwhelming and help the goal to not be achieved, it can be really hard to kind of get back on that proverbial horse and really start again, because it feels like we can internalize that maybe and say, oh, maybe I'm not someone who can meal prep and cook healthy meals, right? And so that's what we really want to avoid. We want to avoid that internalized negative thoughts. We want to think about, hey, I'm somebody who can make healthy meals. I just need to really set myself up for success. So verbiage more like that. So just thinking through a couple more things. So thinking about, how do I make this space for this change in my life? How do I food prep? How do I add grocery shopping? Do I order my groceries or do I go to the grocery store? Who buys them? Do I buy them or somebody else I live with? How do we get other people on board for this change? So if you're not eating alone, you're eating with a family or a partner or other people, how do you make sure that they're going to want to eat the foods that you want to eat as well? I think that also definitely really matters, and just making the time. Something else I wanted to mention on this slide is thinking about getting others on board. And then also, like in the example of going out to eat, say we go out to eat 4 days a week after work because it's easy, or we pick food up on the way home. If that's what we're having and we can order whatever we want on whatever menu we want, and then our alternative is to go home and cook something like unseasoned ground chicken with no salt because we're trying to do low sodium diet, some steamed broccoli, and like a salad and some type of whole grain, but not seasoned. That's going to be really challenging to override the desire to order whatever you want at your favorite restaurant. So you do sometimes want to think about spicing up. What does that meal at home look like? Does it look really fun? Does it look interesting? Is it something you're like salivating to try? So really kind of spending the time to think through, like, what are the recipes that might make you look forward to having that meal at home? This is another thing I think is really, really important. So you really want to align the action with your expected outcome. And thinking through that, a question I would ask is, what your goal that you want to accomplish, is that what you your future self wants? For example, like say you want to go walk your dog, and you're going to walk your dog for 30 minutes twice a day or for 5 days. Or maybe let's make it 15 minutes. So you're going to walk for 30 minutes, 5 days a week for 150 minutes. And so that goal is going to do amazing things for your mental health, for your blood sugar around those times, and for your heart health. But is that 150 minutes of walking with your dog per week going to move the weight scale? Is it going to move the scale? And the answer to that is perhaps, but probably not, right? When we think about weight loss, there are some different strategies that we want to kind of focus on a little bit more. But it doesn't negate the fact that walking is so healthy for your mental health, your blood sugar, and your heart health, your lipids, your blood pressure. It has a cascading effect of benefits, right? But if your one measurement is weight loss and you just start walking, you're not going to maybe see that weight loss number, and it might in turn make you want to change your goal or give up on your healthy goal, because you're not going to see the reflection of your blood sugar or heart health, your lipids right away, unless you're wearing like a continuous glucose monitor or checking on a meter often. It's really going to be at your next lab test. So you have to kind of stick with this goal, knowing that you'll be able to measure it in 3 months, right? So I think that's really also important. We really want to align the action that we're doing to meet what we truly want. Because if we're going to devote time to it, that's really important. But I really don't want anyone to leave thinking that I recommended not to walk or not to walk with your dog. I think walking and exercise has benefits in so many different realms of our life, and I definitely believe in it. I think it's great. We just have to align it with what we are hoping to measure it by. And then finally, really thinking about, is this journey fun? So I know sometimes when we think about behavior change, it's really hard to spark up behavior change. I try to do it as much as possible. I love behavior change. I think it's something that's so important. But how do we make it fun, right? Who wants to do something that's not fun, that's arduous and unpleasant, or always feeling like it's a sacrifice? I feel like so many people say healthy eating is not delicious. So we want to refute those myths. So healthy eating can be delicious, moving our bodies can be enjoyable, but what does that mean to you, right? So it might mean something to me. I like to hike, but maybe you don't like to hike, right? Maybe you like water aerobics. Has been a theme in a lot of the sessions that I've been in lately. A lot of people are mentioning enjoying water aerobics, getting a community, meeting at a pool, low impact, so that being a benefit. But thinking for yourself, like, what do you really like to do? Are you somebody who likes to do things with others? Do you want to start a walking group? Do you want to walk with your dog? Do you want to get to know your neighbors? Do you want to listen to a podcast while you walk? What does that look like? Do you want to research new tasty recipes and really refute that idea that healthy food is not delicious? I definitely don't believe that. Do you want to add more spices or flavors? Go to a store and find a new spice, a new name of a new spice, and try that out. Thinking about more, what are those alternatives when you eat home, like I mentioned, versus eating out. So I always like to, when I'm working with someone, people will come and say, I really want to eat a low sodium diet. Maybe my blood pressure is elevated. I need to eat a low sodium diet. And so then they go and they try to eliminate all salt from their diet. So it's a really large change and food tastes really bland. I would definitely think about, maybe it's not a no sodium diet, it's just a lower sodium diet. So take your baseline, and then we want to move through like where that baseline starts and make realistic goals so that we are eating less sodium, getting benefit to our heart, but not cutting it out completely, because that can be really challenging and not sustainable. So really trying to figure out where you start at a baseline and then making changes from there. That's why I also think sometimes if people say only eat X number of grams of carbohydrate per day, it can be challenging, because some people might say, oh, I already eat less than that. And then the person sitting right next to you could say, I eat triple that, right? So you need to be the expert in your own life and think about, what are you doing and how are you going to make those shifts and those changes? They don't need to fit into the a cookie cutter. They need to just kind of fit in what works for you in your life. So those were the different pitfalls for setting yourself up for success, for setting those goals, really thinking about wanting your stars to not wait for your stars to be aligned, focusing more on the journey versus just focusing on the goal and the outcome, thinking about making your goals really concrete with a plan and an action associated with them, thinking through your whole change and how that's gonna affect your life, and then finally really trying to have specific actions tied to the outcome that you desire, so that motivation isn't lost in the process. So here's our next 5 pitfalls. So pitfalls to sustain your goal. So I think somebody mentioned in the beginning, plateauing. That is something that's so common, right? So when we're chugging along at a goal, maybe it's a movement goal, maybe it's eating more salad and more veggies at dinner goal, and we sort of like kind of plateau. Maybe it's a weight loss goal, and things aren't moving anymore, but we're still kind of doing that same action. what do we kind of apply to help move us out of that plateau? And so these are the ones that I came up with. So not thinking through the barriers that you might end up having to work through, not knowing what to do when things don't go as planned can be really important. Being rigid in your goal setting, not adding enjoyment. So the fun and the enjoyment actually pop into both sections, because fun, I think, is so important. I know fun seems like something who needs fun in health goals, but I think we should bring it back. We gotta keep the fun in everything. And then keeping your environment the same and your cues also the same. So these are the pitfalls of once you've made the change, sustaining that change. So thinking about not thinking through barriers. So the question, how can I lower the barriers in my health changes? So as you're going through, we could take the example of meal planning that I mentioned earlier. So we want to meal plan these 4 meals for the week. What could be the barriers? Maybe our food is perishing. Maybe it doesn't last as long as we want. Maybe somebody else eats in our family our meal prepped meals, and so we go to grab them in the fridge and they're not there anymore. Maybe we realize that it's too much work to wash dishes and find time to meal prep. Maybe we miss the foods that we used to eat when we were ordering foods out or getting whatever other foods that we were eating. So that could also be a barrier, because I always think about when we make a change in our life, there's always 2 sides to a coin, right? And if we only focus on the positive side, we're going to miss out on maybe some thoughts and grieving that we might have to do, that we're letting go of this other side of the coin because we're making a change, right? So you want to build in this opportunity to think through, well, what am I also having to modify my life but to make this change? And what are kind of those barriers that I'm going to be also thinking through? And then really thinking about, how do I add flexibility to my goal? So people have done a lot of research and thinking, making the goal as specific as possible. Like at 3 p.m., I will work out for 30 minutes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, right? That used to kind of be the old way that we used to really think about trying to get people to really verbalize their goals. And what we've kind of realized as we're moving through and understanding more about how people work, having that element of flexibility and time can be really helpful. So maybe somebody knows they want to make a goal and pack lunch 4 times a week, but they don't necessarily say it has to be on these days and it has to be for this meal. But trying to add some flexibility in that so that you are more able to meet that goal and feel successful. So really trying to focus on how we feel successful at our goals can be really super helpful, and less rigid, because sometimes when we're so rigid in our goals, it's so hard to maybe let that go a little bit. And that can be really, really frustrating when we're trying to accomplish a goal and we have to move everything out of our life so that we can make that 3 p.m. goal snack or what workout or whatever that is, versus having more flexibility can make it so we can achieve that goal more often. And I always try to be as intentional as possible with pictures in my presentations and make them as visual as possible, because I'm a visual learner. And so I just felt like this picture just, to me, told me flexibility. It's colorful and it's fluid, but letting those goals be a little bit more fluid. And so when we think about a SMART goal and being time bound, we can think about that time bound being more when we're going to reevaluate the goal, not that we have to focus on like a 3 p.m. goal, but that we can evaluate in a week or 2 weeks. So thinking that that's more around the time bound. And then really thinking about, sometimes I call this like a mantra. So what's the phrase that you really want to repeat as you're kind of going through, working through these changes? And that could be something around like, I can be flexible in this moment, or maybe I can walk later tonight versus now. So really trying to build some more flexibility into that. And sometimes I think about mantras, because as we're plateauing or moving through these goals, there can be times of frustration, right? You feel like you've done everything you set out to do for 2 weeks and the scale hasn't moved, or you get a lab result and it's higher than you expected it to be or that you wanted it to be. How do you kind of keep that resilience and that focus going as you're thinking about it? Having like a phrase that you can repeat, like I can do this goal, or I've done it in the past, I can do it in the future, something that you can fall back on to kind of help continue to build that resilience as you're making your changes. And then really thinking about what is your internal dialogue. This is also something that I'm so really very passionate about, because we all present ourselves one way, but what's our internal dialogue as we're moving through the world and we're thinking about our goal setting? Is it, man, I'm somebody who can't accomplish goals? Or is it more, oh, wow, that was a really busy work week at work. Tomorrow is a new day that I can get back on my walking goal. So do we leave kind of like that door open when we're talking to ourselves, or is the door kind of more shut? Are we thinking about more negative self-talk? So I think that also has a really, really big impact on how these goals go and how we're able to really think about sustaining the goals that we want to achieve, because there always are going to be times where goals get more and more tricky, right? The seasons ebb and flow, commitments ebb and flow. And so thinking about how can we create a little bit more of an openness around when things are a little bit more challenging can be very helpful too. And then really thinking about what in your environment is kind of making your health changes challenging. So I did a talk also on sustainability and cues, and this is something I find so interesting. I really love it. Thinking about the cues in your life. Are the cues in your life helping you to lead a healthier lifestyle, or are the cues in your life sort of maybe less leading you down a less healthy lifestyle? So I've mentioned before, like on our island, we try to put in fruits and veggies on our island, and everybody in my family tries to pitch in and finish part of it. So at the end of the day, we don't have kind of any more fruits and veggies. And if we do on our island, then we chop them up, add them to dinner so that we as a family can consume the goal that we set out for our fruits and vegetables. So that's something that we really like to do. And I think that's been really helpful for increasing our fruits and vegetables. But I will say, as a family, there are times when it falls to the wayside and it's a lot more challenging. Just the other day, my husband actually came and said, is there something that we need to throw out? I see some fruit flies. And I was like, fruit flies? Oh no. And I looked on our little special fruit and veggie bowl, and I realized, because things have been so busy lately, I wasn't refilling it, and nobody had eyes on finishing it at night, and we weren't checking in with it. And so we actually had to recommit to that goal, clean out the bowl, get rid of the older fruits and vegetables, which was a little bit sad, and then restart again. So knowing that goals that we put into play, it doesn't mean that they're going to be a habit for life, but we do sometimes need to revisit and think about them. And having people in our lives to help us with that structure can be really helpful sometimes. Also thinking about exercise goals. So what are the cues to help prompt you to exercise? So thinking about for yourself, is it having your walking shoes by the door, having light weights, having your water bottle ready to go, having a change of clothes at work so you can walk before you head home? So thinking about kind of what do those cues really look like, and thinking about cues just in general in our life. On the way that we drive home, are we driving past maybe 5 different restaurants that are our absolute favorite that we know we can put a quick order in and pick up on the way home? Or are we driving a different way, not close to those restaurants, and making it home maybe faster or maybe a little bit slower, but still not passing by kind of all of those environmental cues that have been prompting us for the last couple of months? So really thinking through, like, what does that look like in your life? What are the cues that are helping you, and what are the cues that are derailing the goals that you've had set forward? And then also know that what are the things that you can recommit to as a cue? Like for the example with our produce bowl on our island. The fact that it had some fruit flies, which is super sad. Thinking about how we recommitted to that, we cleaned up the bowl, washed it out, and it's been more on my mind. And so we've gone back to trying to make sure as a family to finish them. So really, what does that look like? And then just thinking about in what conditions am I setting my goals in? This is one of my absolute favorite things to talk about because it's changed my life. I don't know, like 359 degrees, almost 360. And really, that's the idea of an empathy gap. So we want to set our goals and we want to evaluate our goals when we're in the moment. So if we want to make a change to dinner, then we want to create our goal around cooking dinner when we're about to cook dinner, right? At 3 or 4 p.m. Because if we set the goal, say we're meeting with someone or talking it through with a dietitian or a friend or a family member, and it's 10 a.m., we just had a really hearty breakfast, we're feeling not hungry, we feel super motivated and full and happy. And then we set this goal to cook 5 different dishes for dinner because we're in a mindset where we could do that if you had to cook in the next 30 minutes. But when we get to the doorstep of our house and we're starving, people are wanting dinner, things are chaotic, that's not really creating the goal that's realistic for that moment. It's creating the goal that was realistic for the 10 a.m. moment, right? So we want to close this empathy gap. We want to give ourselves kindness and empathy and say, hey, body, like, let me actually take 5 minutes to set the goal in the moment, the heat of the moment, and try to do it that way, because I know that's going to ensure the goal is going to be more realistic. And then thinking about how can I build fun into my health change? So definitely fun and enjoyment are super important because if we're thinking about making a change and we're thinking about doing it for life, and it's arduous and not fun and actually completely not fun, something we dread, it's not going to be something that we can sustain, right? If we're telling ourselves, I'm just going to focus on willpower and muscle through, I'm going to power through, I'm somebody who powers through, that to me is a little bit of a red flag that this goal maybe isn't going to be something that is sustainable. If we're powering through something all the time, at some time our soul gets tired and we can't keep powering through. So how do we create goals that have fun built into them? Like temptation bundling for exercise goals, things that really build our favorite podcast. Somebody told me today to get on the treadmill, they will watch their favorite like little mini videos on YouTube and they save them just for treadmill time. So how do we put things that are really tempting, high value, that we enjoy doing with things that we should do for our health? Maybe it's listening to our favorite podcast when we work out, or like having a favorite song and only listening to it when we're doing something for our health, like cooking in the kitchen, like a pump up kitchen song or something like that. So how do we add fun to these changes that we want to make? And then just thinking about when we're really stuck in change, some of my things I really like to think about is giving yourself advice. Because we often give really great advice to other people, but we don't always give that same great advice to ourselves. So even imagining that we were telling a friend the same scenario that we're living in and having that friend come back to us, or really ourselves, and tell us their recommendations, right? So it doesn't have to be so crazy as saying, hey, Leah, what do you think about this goal? But it could just be this internal dialogue, like, if this were my dearest friend or my partner, like what advice would I give them? It tends to be a kinder way to give advice and tends to be pretty good. We give great advice, I think, to ourselves. Thinking about just one thing that you want to change, and then really thinking about kind of starting small and that empathy gap. So those are definitely some things I think that we can think about to get us out of being stuck and being in those plateaus, evaluating the things that have worked in the past and seeing how we need to apply them for the future. And then just finally, just some more words. I try to make my slides more visual based, but really kind of trying to not focus on the healthiest veggie, the healthiest fruit, kind of not waiting for those stars to be aligned, thinking about the mindset, no pain, no gain, taking the enjoyment out of behavior changes, having that fixed mindset, thinking about that mantra, not I'm an unhealthy person, but really thinking about I'm somebody that can change my health status. It's been proven, and I can do the things that I need to do that my body and my health is needing right now. So kind of reframing that as more of like an open option, and then kind of having that end in sight and saying, hey, I'm going to eat this way for a wedding I'm going to, or I want to fit in this special dress, or I want to go for this family gathering. But really thinking through, imagine that I'm there on a soccer field, like cutting out the little netting on the soccer ball goals. I'm sure I would get in big trouble, but like imagine me cutting that out so that the soccer ball just keeps moving. The velocity, it's just moving through time for almost an infinite amount of time. So just kind of thinking through, moving through those different goals. And then with that, I covered a lot of different pitfalls, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time, and I definitely am happy to take questions in the last 10 minutes or so. I know I made you all really put kind of your own sort of expert and thinking caps on, so wanting to also make sure that I'm addressing any questions that you all have as well. Can you address portion control and how it's best to go about the topic on a daily basis? Yes, that is a great question. So portion control can be really important. And I think it's also something to think about. What is the portion control for you? So sometimes in class, we like to teach the portion control around like maybe a fist-sized carb, a palm-sized protein, double fist-sized veggies. But for you, maybe that's something that doesn't fit or resonate. Maybe you're somebody who is already eating double fist-sized veggies and you want to maybe make a change in, for example, your triglycerides, the fat in your blood. Maybe you really target that portion size around processed and refined grains to move that number. So I think portion size also matters what the outcome you desire to be. So if it's lowering A1C, maybe we look at portion sizes of refined carbohydrates, things that are going to spike our blood sugar higher, or more processed foods. Maybe we think about trying to get more high fiber foods in our carb options, like lentils, legumes, mixed in. Maybe we think in that mindset. But I think portion sizes can be definitely a helpful thing to think about, and it can be variable for everyone. Also, like if you're more active or less active, that of course can also change. I also think somebody in the beginning mentioned about like anxiety eating, and I think sometimes that's what can make portion sizes tricky, right? Sometimes if we delay meals because we've had a really stressful day, and then at the end of the night, we're so hungry that we can put a lot of food into our stomach before our stomach then tells our brain that we're full. It takes a little while for that to happen. And so our portion sizes can also change in that mindset. So setting yourself up the best way you possibly can if you're thinking about implementing portion sizes. And maybe start with one and see how that goes. Hopefully I answered that question. If not, feel free to ask again. And then, the empathy gap. Yes, great. Okay. I get to talk about my favorite topic again. I love talking about the empathy gap. So basically the empathy gap is thinking about, you want to create the goal in the environment and the mindset that you will be when you have to implement the goal. So in my example, you don't want to create the goal around cooking dinner or changing your dinner time at 10 a.m. in the morning after you've had breakfast when you're not feeling stressed. You want to create whatever that goal is going to be in the time that you'd have to implement the goal. For example, you want to set that goal for dinner at 5:30 p.m. You want to take a quick breather and say, 5:30 p.m., I'm feeling a little stressed. Things are a little crazy. What is the thing that would actually be realistic now? And that could be maybe buying like a bagged salad and throwing that into whatever meal that you're planning on making. Maybe it's like you're throwing a frozen pizza in the oven, but you're also adding a big bag of quick mix salad that you don't even have to wash. You're just putting it into the dinner, and you're going to add that. So you're adding veggies. And so your goal might look very different if you create it in that time with the empathy gap, when you can be kinder to yourself, than if you create that goal at 10 a.m. And I find this to be so important, especially when I'm working with people, because oftentimes in our sessions, we're trying to add fun, we're all really motivated, we're thinking about it, we're excited and energized, and then people go home and they are maybe alone in implementing that goal, and the goal soon becomes bigger than they thought it was going to be in the moment of the session. So really trying to think about what makes a realistic goal. Hopefully that answered your question. Those are all the questions that I see. Does anyone have any other questions? I feel so totally honored to be able to talk about these different topics, because I think sometimes we really want somebody to tell us, like, don't eat sugar, this is where sugar is hidden, avoid it all. And sometimes when we're living our lives, that might be the desire in what we want to do, but it's something that is maybe not right for the season of our life, right? Maybe our season of our life is so busy and so full, so we feel like we can't get started to be healthy because the healthy goal that's being portrayed is too big. So we can start tonight and we can start tomorrow, hopefully at the end of the session. Oh, I saw a couple more questions. Oh, thank you. People like the SMART goals. That's good. And so I think my call to action to everybody is that you think about the thing you want to focus on and move through, even for this weekend, for tomorrow. You can also rewatch the presentation, think about the pitfalls, but really try to set yourself up for success. And if you find that there are barriers that you're making as you're making these changes and things are more tricky than you expected, just try to have that kindness to yourself and say, maybe I could try to set that goal at a different time point when things are more stressful. Maybe it just wasn't a realistic goal, not the idea of internalizing, I'm not somebody who can make the healthy change, because that's what I really always want to not have happen to people. We want to know that we are people that can make healthy changes. And with that, I just thank you all so much for your time tonight. It's been a complete pleasure, and I just am so appreciative for you all, and I wish you the best in your health journeys. And also Stanford has, we keep having more dietitians. We're all specialized. I think there's almost 70 of us at Stanford. So also, if you go to another healthcare place, you can meet with somebody one-on-one if you have very specific questions. So thank you. Bye.